About 4 months ago, we moved into a new house out in the country. Since we previously lived in an apartment, that means that we needed to buy a new lawnmower. Instead of putting out $200 on a brand new lawnmower when we'd probably just have to move again in a couple of years, we decided instead to hire someone to cut our grass for us. We initially went with a guy that my fiance used to work with, but $65 every 2 weeks, well, starts to add up, and I was really looking for something cheaper. That brings me to Charles. Charles had posted in my Facebook classified that he was looking for some lawns that he could cut this weekend, and he had a reputable company, or so I thought. So I decided to send him a message on Facebook. Now, initially, Charles came off as pretty nice to me. He asked me for my address so that he could stop by and give me an estimate. After stopping by my house, he sent me a message that said,
"Damn, sweetheart, you got a big-ass porch."
It made me kind of uncomfortable, but I figured I was just overreacting, and I started planning when he could come out. I told him the days that I was off from work, but he assured me that I didn't have to be there when he would do the work. I told him the best time would probably be on a Wednesday. Wednesday morning, he messaged me.
"Are you home?"
I said no. 3 hours later,
"Are you home yet?"
I told him no yet again and that I won't be home until after 8. Charles then informed me that his tire had a flat and he would come tomorrow instead. Let's cut to Thursday, and first thing in the morning, he sends me a message.
"Will you be home today?"
I told him no. He messages me back a few hours later once again asking if I'm home. I told him, "No, I told you I wouldn't be home all day. Are you still coming out?" Then he tells me his truck broke down. He was sending me messages like,
"Please don't be upset with me, sweetheart."
At this point, I was getting really creeped out and pretty sick of his excuses, but I told him to just come tomorrow. It's now Friday and it's actually my day off, but I woke up and I left the house for the day. He messages me,
"Hey, I'm coming. You're off today, right?"
I told him yes, but that I wouldn't be home.
"When will you be home then?"
I told him I didn't know, and he messages me later saying,
"Sorry, babe. I was loading the equipment onto my truck and it then fell and broke. Maybe I can come tomorrow."
At this point, I was really creeped out and I just told him never mind and that I was gonna find someone else at this point. It's now Saturday and I get off work around 4 or 5 and I check my phone and I find multiple messages from him saying that he cut my grass and that I need to come home and give him the money. I told him no and that I would just send it through Cash App. He started getting really irate with me and saying that I needed to give him the money right now. I told him that I would give him the money once I got home and actually saw that the grass was cut for myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was honestly really worried that he was gonna be waiting at my house for me, so I decided to get a friend of mine to drive home right behind me. Luckily, he wasn't there. I sent him the money and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward 2 months later. I'm on the phone with my fiance as I drive to class and he tells me that he has to get off the phone because there's somebody walking down our driveway. I asked him what he meant and he said that there was some strange man walking around in our driveway as well as our front yard. After I got to class, he sent me a text telling me that it was some man who was just trying to promote his lawn business. Now, I didn't really think too much about this as it had been 2 months. But later that night, I then got home and I saw a business card that was laying on my counter. And it had the same exact name of the very same man who had been messaging me previously. I decided to call my fiance at work and I asked how the guy had been acting. He said that Charles seemed genuinely surprised that a man had come out and he asked if he lived alone. I then asked Mike if Charles had stopped at any of the other houses in the neighborhood, and then he replied with, "You know, now that I think about it, no. After he left our house, he just left." Mike said that Charles seemed really desperate to help around the house and he actually offered to cut the lawn, fix our porch, as well as remove any trash or scrap metal we had around the house. And then he even asked if we had pests such as bats in our attic or anything. That especially really freaked me out as we do have a bat problem, and I had previously posted about it on Facebook, so I'm guessing that's where he figured that out. Mike then said that what was really weird about Charles is how freaked out he was acting about the dog. He had heard our dog Max barking from inside and then started asking a lot of questions like,
Is he big? Does he stay inside or outside? Does he ever go outside or does he just always stay inside? How big is he? Is he nice?
Mike just chalked it up to him being scared of dogs. He gave him a brief tour of the outside of our house, and then Charles got in his truck and then left. That's when I told Mike that this was the same guy who had been messaging me earlier in the year, and then Mike began to really freak out. He said that Charles had asked a lot of really specific questions about who all lived here and how long they lived here, as well as where they specifically were at the time. He said that he tried to brush them off, but Charles seemed really insistent to know if Mike was the only one in the house. Before he left though, Mike specifically asked him if he had cut the lawn here before, and that maybe he was thinking of the last owners, but Charles just told him,
No, I've never cut your grass before. I just happened to be out this way and thought I'd promote my business.
The worst part? On that day, I had taken my fiance's car to work that day, which means that mine was in the driveway when Charles stopped by, meaning that he thought I was home alone when he stopped by. I didn't contact the police because I thought that I just might be overreacting about it. This all happened about 2 days ago, but hopefully I don't hear from him again. If I do, however, I'll definitely give an update. So this happened a few weeks back. As I'm sure most of you know, Facebook now has a dating component to it. I matched with this guy who seemed pretty chill to me. He was older than me. His profile had stated that he was 27 years old and I had just turned 23. But in my mind, 4 years age difference really isn't that big of a deal. We talked for about a day or two and decided that we would meet up for a drink to try and get a feel for each other in person. When we met face to face, he looked a little older than just 27. He had quite a bit of gray mixed into his facial hair, but I figured he might just be one of those people whose hair turns gray earlier in life. No big deal. We have a few drinks and then we chatted for a bit. He again states that he's 27 years old. He was really nice, but he wouldn't stop staring at me and feeding me compliments with every single sentence that came out of his mouth. I'm really awkward and I'm honestly pretty average looking. I was really flattered that he was saying those things to me, but naturally, it made me uncomfortable. Shortly after that, I decided it was time for me to head out, since I had to be up for work around 4:30 a.m. the next day. He walked me to my car and then we started discussing his car. It really caught my attention due to the fact that it was a 1970 Camaro. Then out of nowhere, he offered to take me a drive in it around 10 p.m. I declined due to the time and to the fact that I had only known this guy for less than 2 hours, and he wants me to get in his car and go on a random drive late at night? Yeah, that definitely wasn't going to happen. Something I really enjoy is watching documentaries about serial killers as well as reading creepy encounters and let's not meet stories. The last thing I'm about to do is get into a vehicle with an unfamiliar man who's then going to take me to God knows where. I know what kind of danger that can lead to, and I wasn't going to risk it. He was very persistent about it, but I wouldn't budge. So I just got in my car and left for my drive home, which was about 45 minutes long. By the time I arrived home, I received a ton of messages from him. Most of them saying how much he already missed me, wants to build a future with me, and how he's never fallen for anyone this fast during his 38 years of life. Then continuing with further compliments. And that's when my stomach then dropped. He had just stated that he was 38 years old. That's not what I was told at the bar or what his profile said. I replied to him, wondering whether or not it bothered him that he was 15 years older than I was. And I know it bothered me for damn sure. He states that it didn't and he prefers to date younger women around my age. I didn't respond and I just went to bed after that. When I woke up the next morning, I had multiple text messages and 5 missed calls and voicemails from that guy. I'm not going to lie, I straight up ghosted him after that. I blocked him on every form of social media that I had as well as his phone number. Which I guess is a crappy thing to do on my part, but he really creeped me out. He was super charming, but he was way too pushy, and he was giving me some real Ted Bundy vibes. So shout out to Facebook. I really want to thank you for introducing me to the creepiest person I've ever gone on a date with. So yeah, I think that's the last time I'll use Facebook for a date. About a month ago, I got a Facebook request from someone who I didn't recognize, but we had a lot of mutual friends, so I figured we must have met before and maybe I just didn't remember. Immediately, right after accepting his friend request, he then tried to video chat me on Facebook Messenger. I didn't respond, and after a few tries, he gave up. Then last week, I got a phone call from an unknown number, and I decided to answer it because I've been waiting to hear back for a possible job that I applied for. When I answered the phone, a very excited voice then said,
"Hey, how's it going?"
He also said my name. And well, the thing is, my name is fairly unusual and isn't pronounced the way it's spelled, so it was kinda weird that this guy knew my name. When I asked who it was though, it was the guy from Facebook. I told him that wasn't my name and that he had the wrong number. Then he started asking me a bunch of personal questions in a row, like where I lived and what school I went to. I kept telling him that I wasn't really comfortable with his questions, but he didn't stop, so I just hung up on him. He then called me yet again the next day, but as soon as I heard his voice, I just hung up. If he calls me again, I'm just going to block him. The creepiest part of all of this is that I don't really have any personal information on my Facebook page, and I definitely don't have my phone number there. I also don't think that any of our mutual friends would give out my number like that, so I really want to know how he got it. I don't know. The whole thing is just really creepy to me. When I was in my early 20s, I was very mentally unstable, lonely, and really desperate for friends. I've really struggled with binge eating, and it was really particularly bad at the time, with a lot of delivery and late-night fast food binges. One night, I decide to order a pizza, and this man delivers it, maybe in his mid to late 30s or early 40s, and I think I was about 19 or 20 at the time. We didn't really have any particularly engaging conversation. It was a normal pizza delivery driver kind of conversation. He may have complimented me on my piercings or hair at the time, or a shirt, but I don't really remember. This was like a decade ago. I do know though that there was nothing that indicated that I wanted to be friends with this guy, and it really was just simply a customer/driver interaction. I think it was a day or so later, and he adds me on Facebook. I really want to emphasize that this was days later, meaning he took my information home or noted it somewhere. It took me a minute to figure out who he was, and that's when I realized that he found me based on my order information. Being unstable, lonely, and really desperate for friends, I just decided to accept the friend request. He had left some really creepy, typical overly sexual compliments on some of my Facebook photos, but we never met or talked or really anything ever again, and I think I deleted him a few months later. I don't remember exactly, but I definitely realized that it was weird. So to the weird delivery driver that was almost twice my age at the time, and then decided after less than a 10-minute interaction to find me on Facebook days later, I hope I don't see you again, and I hope you didn't do this to anyone else. Or if you did, I really hope that they were smarter than I was and in a better place than me. I probably should have reported this to the company, but you know, hindsight 2020. I also want to note that I've had tons of delivery drivers creepily try to flirt with me since, and it's the worst. Please, just let me eat my greasy ass food in peace. As a former delivery driver myself, unless you have a dog, let's keep this brief and courteous, and always remember to tip your drivers. That is, unless they're a creep. So this happened to me about 5 years ago when I was 18. I had decided to take a break from my longtime high school boyfriend after graduation because he was 2 years older than me and just a complete control freak. I was hanging out with my friend Jenna most of the time, not really doing much other than smoking weed and hanging out with all of our friends, when life was simple. To set the story, I'm a petite blonde, and not to sound in any way overly confident, but especially back then, I was pretty good looking at the time. Meaning that I was in shape and dressed pretty well. I'm just a lazy mom now. So from time to time, I would, like any other girl, get creepy Facebook messages from random strangers, basically just telling me I was pretty or that they wanted to take me out. One day though, when my friend Jenna and I were sitting at our friend Tommy's house, I saw that I had received a Facebook message from this guy named Chadley, who was apparently an Abercrombie model. And let me tell you, this man was in tip-top physical shape. Like, he was one of those guys that stood outside of the Abercrombie stores with his shirt off. Not my type at all, but I wasn't not going to talk to a hot guy. But anyways, basically Chadley sent me a message saying,
"Hey, you look really familiar. Have we met before?"
So it was a bit of a different approach than all of the other men who would always come on strong at first. Mind you, I wasn't really looking for a boyfriend or really to talk to any guys. I guess at the time I was just kind of happy to get the attention. I feel like that kind of thing can really boost anyone's self-esteem. So the conversation goes as followed. No, I don't think I've ever met you.
"Maybe I just saw you at a party or something. I just saw your Facebook and you look so familiar and you're really gorgeous. I just had to ask."
Oh my gosh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Then we started to conversate about what schools we were from, our exes, and so on. At the time, I was really interested in cars. My entire family works in that industry, and I was telling him what my dream car would be. He seemed nice and somewhat normal at first. He eventually asked me to come hang out at his house, and he lived in a very upscale town and neighborhood. So I thought to myself, hell, why not? I mean, it's not like I'm doing anything else that's productive with my time. So I head over to his house around 8 p.m. on a really cold, wintry evening. As soon as I arrive, he greets me at the door. He then leads me into what looks like a poorly put together office. Inside, he pulls up his computer screen, and he literally had YouTube pulled up, and in the search bar was fast cars. And he was pretty much showing me a video of just a car going really fast. Like, cool dude, but why are you showing me this? I proceeded to act amused by it, and then he asked me if I wanted to watch a movie with him. I accepted and he put something in, but just the whole vibe from him was just really weird. But at the same time, I guess I kept ignoring the red flags because of how good looking he was. So after the night was over, I said goodbye and then I left, promising to link up again with him soon. He literally texts me not even seconds after I walk out the door.
"Hey, text me when you get home."
Okay, so I get home and I tell him I'm safe and good night, and then he just insists on keeping the conversation going.
"So what are you doing tomorrow?"
Probably nothing after school.
"Would you want to go out to eat?"
Okay, sure. Yeah, that sounds cool. So once again, I head over to his house later in the evening and we get in his beat up Honda and we drive to an Outback that was nearby. So we walk inside and then we have to sit down as there was a wait. And he just keeps looking at his phone, like he's waiting for something. Finally it lights up and he then gets a call from a friend.
"Hello? Yeah man, I can't talk about football right now. I'm on a date." "Yeah man, it's the girl I was telling you about." "Okay, I'll call you back later."
Then he hung up. Still getting some really weird vibes from him, I just proceed with the date. Something about this guy is just really off, and it felt like he was trying to move really fast with me. All I could think about was just going home and not talking to him anymore. He just wasn't my type. So once we get back to his house, he then asked me if I wanted to come inside. Sorry, but I think I need to get home. It's getting pretty late and I'm really tired. He looks upset and then he says,
"Oh, come on. Just come in for a second. I want to show you something cool."
Red flag, but my younger self was pretty much down for whatever, so I just said, sure, fine. Show me what you want to show me. We walk inside and we are instantly, and I mean almost if they're standing right on the other side of the door waiting for me, instantly greeted by this guy's mom and dad. "Oh hi Chadley, is this the girl you keep talking about?" "What? I literally met this guy 2 days ago and he's already talking about me to his mom?"
"Yeah, she's really great."
Then his dad says, "Well, we'll leave you two alone. Hey, check out his swimming pictures on the mantle. He's a really awesome swimmer." "Okay, nice to meet you guys," I say, and I want to nope the heck out of there so fast, but not before Chadley kept trying to talk my ear off.
So I really want to be in the FBI when I graduate, and then I want to be an Abercrombie & Fitch model, like on the shopping bags.
He literally sounded like a child. Okay, Chadley, I'm sorry, but I really need to leave, I say. He walks me out to my car and just kind of stands there awkwardly expecting me to kiss him. But hell no. I jump in my Jeep, wave by, and back the hell out. He was just a really odd guy and I just wasn't interested at all. Now that you have the entire backstory, here's where it gets weird. So the next few days, I kept getting constant texts from Chadley. Every day it would always start as,
"Hey."
And for a little I said hey back because I didn't want to be rude to him. Thankfully I was going to Florida that week and I had a legit excuse as to why I couldn't see him. But literally every day he just kept sending me messages saying hey. And my responses just kept getting shorter and shorter every time, pretty much to the point where I wasn't even responding anymore. But well, that didn't stop Chadley. He kept texting me every single day for almost 2 months after I stopped responding to him. Eventually, it was just getting so annoying and I decided to block his number. Then I started getting calls. Calls from random numbers, calls from private numbers, like non-stop. I picked up a few times, but no one was there. Then I would get another call and I would pick up and I could hear a man in the background. It was Chadley. I stopped answering my phone at that point. Then I kept getting Facebook messages from him.
"Hey."
That's all he would ever say, repeatedly, just basically spamming me with hays. I was just so annoyed and I decided to block him again. That should be the last time I hear from him, or so I thought. Well, wrong again. So literally an entire 2 years later and I get involved with another guy and things are going really great with us. One day, however, I get a message on Facebook while I was at work from a man named Chadley. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I open it and then it says,
"Hey stranger, how have you been?"
And of course I didn't respond. But before I could even block him, he then writes back,
"Okay, you little hoe, you could just be nice and say hi back to me. You don't have to be a total ass about it."
Whoa, Chadley, what? And before I could even respond, I get a text to my phone. Can you guess what it said?
"Hey."
Right after he just freaked me out on Facebook. I wrote back, "Take a hint, bro, and leave me the hell alone already." To which I have no idea what his response was because I pretty much blocked him immediately afterwards. So thankfully, that's finally the end of my run-ins with Chadley. But it's so not the end of the story. So one day I was with my friend Claire and she had her Facebook Messenger pulled up, showing me a message that one of her exes sent to her, when I see none other than Chadley in her messages. And guess what this creepy freak messaged her?
"Hey, you look really familiar. Have we met before?"
I decided to ask her about it and what do you know? She said that he kept trying to get her to come over to his house, but she declined because he wasn't her type. Then a whole year later, I get a job as a general manager for a fine dining restaurant. One of my employees that I recognized upon hire was Chadley's ex-girlfriend's sister. After getting to know her a little bit better, my curiosity really got the best of me. I asked her what he was like. Guess what her response was? Apparently Chadley had met her sister on Facebook. After once again asking,
"Hey, you look familiar. Have we met before?"
And when this girl agreed to date him, literally after a month, he was already obsessed with her. Apparently after they broke up, Chadley had actually stalked her for years afterwards. And he actually ended up tracking her down at her new boyfriend's house and then started an altercation with him. He was a complete freak. So creepy Facebook stalker Chadley, please don't message or contact me ever again for the rest of my life. Please. I was on Snapchat for 20 seconds when all of my friends had already reposted these really weird messages saying that a senior had then threatened to shoot up the school. The message by the guy had said,
"Mothers will mourn, siblings will cry, fathers will remember. I'm going to kill someone this week. God help me."
Then there was a video of him shooting an AR-15. I was understandably totally creeped out. I started calling my mom and dad, crying and begging for them not to make me go to school. Luckily, they said they heard about it and that me and my sister didn't have to go to school. There were about 3 kids that ended up being arrested for the plot of the threat, and nothing actually happened that day. I don't know what happened to the guy who said that, but all I know is that I hope he got the help that he needs. It's really crazy to think about what could have happened if he would have succeeded. I've been trying to have more of a social life. I spend most of my days off from work at home and in bed. It's gotten so bad that whenever I attempt to go out, I immediately get overwhelmed and I always have to leave. I've even downloaded a few apps that are strictly for platonic relationships, and because of this interaction, I'll definitely be uninstalling them. It doesn't really take much for me to be friends with someone. I guess I'm really naive and look past any possible red flags if there are any. I met someone that I used to work with in the same building, and we both thought, wow, who would have guessed that we'd cross paths? Then boom, instantly became friends. Let's call him Josh. Josh told me I was pretty during a couple of times during our first interaction, but I brushed it off and I told him that I only wanted a friend, and he seemed to be okay with that. One thing that really stood out to me was how easy it was to talk to him. We talked every day constantly for about a week via Snapchat, and I really enjoyed our conversations. It was enough for me to want to hang out with them. Last night, I got out of work a little earlier than expected, so I thought that I'd go to a bar since it was still happy hour. I had a good day and I really wanted a beer. 1 beer turned into like 8, and the drunken, outgoing, not so socially awkward me came out to play. I pulled out my phone and then started looking through my contact list for anyone to invite. I messaged Josh and sure enough, he was down. He requested an Uber and within about 10 minutes, he showed up. The initial meeting was pretty fine. The alcohol flowing through me made it really easy. He wasn't really interested in doing any drinking, so I closed my tab and I had a really brilliant plan. Let's freaking go to Walmart, I exclaimed. I don't really know why I wanted to go to Walmart, I just wanted to do something. Josh happily agreed though, so we walked to Walmart. When we got there, Josh had told me that he had to use the bathroom, so while he did that, I walked around the store waiting for him. A lot of time passed, so I decided to message him and ask what's up. Josh then replied with,
I went to the bathroom to jerk off.
When I asked him why he told me that and why he told me he had a boner, it was really awkward and he said that he was trying to get rid of it. I don't really know what exactly was going through my head at the time, but I remember muttering, "What the hell?" to myself over and over again. Shortly after, he messaged me a bunch asking me to help him, saying that it was because of me, telling me just how much that he really wanted to screw me and how he was really close to coming out of the bathroom and kissing me. Just really gross stuff. I started hyperventilating. My heart literally felt like it was going to jump right out of my chest. My flight or fight mode then kicked in and I just started running out of that Walmart. I ran back to the bar I was at and got another beer. I also told the bartender everything that happened just in case he decided to come back. Then I requested an Uber to go home. I'm sober now and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. I actually decided to go back and read our messages and I was way too freaking nice about it. I just kept saying to him that it's okay, I'm just a bit uncomfortable, and also apologizing afterwards. I decided to text Josh about an hour ago. I wanted to let him know that his behavior was not okay, and that I screenshot the messages. He apparently shops pretty frequently at the store that I work at, so I know that I'll eventually have to face him again, and it really sends shivers down my spine. Just great. When I was 13 years old, my mom had a breakdown and she couldn't work for over a year. This caused us some economic issues and we lost a lot of things in our house. Our car was the main problem. It broke down and my mom didn't have enough money to get someone to fix it, so all she could really do was get rid of it. Without a car, we all started taking the bus and train pretty much everywhere. Me and my brother took the bus to school, and our school was actually kind enough to get us taxis to drive us home. One day, about 2 or 3 years after my mom's breakdown, I was waiting outside for my taxi to come. The taxi usually comes out about 15 minutes after I end the last lesson, but on that day in particular, it was about 50 minutes late. Then when it finally came, I jumped inside and he drove off. I was a little sour that I had to wait almost an hour, but I didn't really complain since I was really just happy to finally be on my way home. Now, since I took the taxi home pretty much every single day of school, I had started recognizing the drivers. The driver on that day was pretty new. I had never seen him before. He had a full beard and an AC/DC cap on. The first thing he did after he drove off was apologizing for being so late. I told him it was okay and he started up a conversation. He asked me if I wanted him to put on some music, and I said sure. I discovered quite quickly that he actually had the same taste of music as me, so I felt right at home. No real worries at all yet. About a week or so later, I was waiting outside for the taxi. I realized the taxi was then late yet again, and a thought came to my mind that maybe it was that driver. He had become my favorite driver since he had been so friendly and really talkative, but I hadn't really seen him since that one time. And just as quick as that thought came to my mind, the taxi arrived, and surprise, surprise, it was him. I decided to sit at the front this time for some reason, and we started up a new conversation. I remember his phone's notification tone. I thought it was funny, so I laughed a little, and that started up a new conversation about how he found himself to be funnier than most guys out there. He asked me if I agreed, and that's when all of the red flags started going off. However, I decided to shake it off. Everyone says weird things sometimes. It's okay, right? After a bit of talking, he then asked me about my age. Really just viewing it as an innocent question, I then answered him that I had just turned 15. He pulled out a piece of paper as well as a pen, and then he asked me a question.
Do you have Snapchat?
I kind of got silent for a while. The alarm bells were wailing like crazy, and I just knew this was wrong. He was like 30 years old and I was 15, and he was my taxi driver. Why would I want to talk to my taxi driver on my spare time? I was so scared to turn him down though. I really didn't know what he would do if I turned him down. It's not like he was forcing it on me or that he was trying to be intimidating, but I just didn't trust that it would turn out alright if I turned him down. So I said yes, and then I wrote my username on the paper. When I finally came home that afternoon, I felt really guilty about it. It just didn't feel right. I got into the house, got into my room, then sat down on my bed with my phone right in front of me and just stared at it. I was really terrified that he was going to add me and then start talking, but also that I had misspelt my username and that he would probably question me about it the next time he picked me up. And then after about 10 minutes, I got a notification. He added me. He had sent me a hey. I tried pulling myself together and then started chatting with him. Now at first, it was pretty innocent. Then of course, it started getting weird. For everything I said, he would come up with a way to compliment me or try and be flirty. Example, so where do you live? I asked. Since he knew where I lived, I thought it wouldn't really be a big deal to ask where he lived.
I live in a small town right outside of yours. Why? Do you want to come visit sometime?
He said. What do you do in your spare time?
I like to go fishing. It's a guilty pleasure of mine.
Oh wow, I've always wanted to try that out.
Maybe we can do it together sometime.
And then came the creepiest question. I had started catching on what he was after, so I then started to question him about it. Why did you even add me?
What? I thought you liked older men.
Yeah, it was creepy, and no, I didn't like older men. He had apparently thought that since I liked having a conversation with him, that I liked him or something. So the very next day afterwards, I was absolutely terrified that he was gonna pick me up. I thought about blocking him or telling him to stop talking to me, but I was only a 15-year-old girl, and he was a big 30-year-old grown man. What if he got mad at me? God knows what he would do to me the next time he picked me up if he was in a sour mood. To my absolute relief, the taxi that picked me up that day was a different driver, and as quick as I got inside, I told him what happened. I had asked him to tell his boss or whatever to maybe reassign him so that I wouldn't have to see him, but luckily the boss was a lot smarter than that. The next day afterwards, the driver had told me that the man was fired and he was never going to drive another taxi for the rest of his life. I really hope that's true. Apparently he had been preying on a lot of other young girls too, but none of them had spoken out about it. I blocked him on Snapchat, and I haven't seen or heard from him since. Thank the Lord. This happened about 2 or 3 years ago when I was still a minor and in high school. I was walking home alone, and I think it was starting to get close to daylight savings. It was around 5 p.m. and it was starting to get dark. I was making my way past downtown since I live nearby. My high school is in the dead center of downtown, so most people have to either drive or walk through it to get back to the neighborhoods. So as I was walking back, I was minding my own business and started listening to a podcast. I think that I might have been crossing a street or a stoplight when I then laughed at whatever I was listening to, and this weird guy then kind of shoots me a weird look. I ignored it and just kept walking down the street, assuming that he wasn't going to bother me since he seemed to be going in a different direction than me. I was about 2 blocks down when I see the same guy now jogging up to me, and I was really put off by him since he was some older guy, maybe in his 30s.
Hey girl, I just ran a mile to come talk to you.
I kind of just rolled my eyes at him and then said, "You ran like 2 blocks.
I guess I was just exaggerating. Anyways, I just wanted to tell you that you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. How old are you?"
I'm a minor. Well, this didn't stop him.
Oh, so you're younger. I really dig that in a relationship.
At this point, I really wanted to tell him to screw off, but there was nobody around since I was on the edges of downtown and it was starting to turn into apartments. I just asked him what he wanted so that I could leave, and he asked me for my number. I felt like it was the safest option to give him what he wanted, but instead I punched in my Snapchat. He let me leave after this, and we both went on our ways. At this point, I thought that he would maybe only shoot me about 2 or 3 messages and then give up. Not even 2 hours later, this dude actually messages me about 3 times asking to take me out to a bar and drink, and I then felt disgust boil up inside of me. I reminded him that I'm a minor and that I couldn't really do that. He continued to say some pretty nasty things to me, telling me I was hot and how he wanted to mess around with me. I was starting to get really pissed off, but instead of blocking his number, I really wanted to give him a piece of my mind. So I told him he was gross and that he shouldn't even be talking to me since I was a minor, and the fact that he was preying on younger girls was really nasty. Then he said,
"Oh damn, I really love that you're so fiery and sassy. I hope our babies are just like that in the future. You're gonna be a really great mother to my kids. Let me pick you up from your high school so we can mess around."
My skin ran cold at this remark, and I instantly blocked his Snapchat. I never actually told him that I was even in high school or what high school I was going to. For a while, I always made sure not to walk that same way home, and I always watched out for him, but I never saw his car again. Thankfully, he left me alone. I'm guessing to go prey on some other young girls. I really just want to warn other young girls of this predatory behavior, and if you think you're in danger or that someone might come on to you, always make sure you have some form of self-defense. If there's no way out of the situation, try to resolve the issue and get out of there as quickly as possible. Before anyone asks me why I have a stranger on my Snapchat in the first place, I'm going to clarify that whenever people add me, whether it's from my Instagram or just quick add, I always add them back. However, I don't remember adding this guy back. So basically, this started yesterday when me and my cousin just got home from a party around 10 p.m. We were sitting in my living room for a while, just watching Netflix, and nothing seemed really weird during that time. At one point, I jokingly said to my cousin, "Look behind you," because we really like to mess with each other like that. However, this time she was pretty sure that she actually saw something in the window actually move behind her. Not really thinking anything of it, I just figured she was trying to scare me back, and pretty much just forgot about it. That was until out of nowhere, my dog jumped up, ran to the front door, and then started barking really aggressively. We kept trying to yell at her, trying to get her to stop, but she didn't leave it alone for at least another 3 minutes. I thought that maybe she could have just heard a noise from the TV or something that scared her. But the movie we were watching had ended like 30 minutes ago, and we were both just sitting in silence on our phones. Keep in mind, all of this happened around 12 a.m. After this happened, I was kind of nervous and pretty confused, but my dog had done this a few times before, so once again, I just tried to ignore it and not really think too much about it. It was now around 1 a.m. when me and my cousin decided to go upstairs and start getting ready for bed. I was laying down and on my phone checking out Snapchat when I decided to open Snap Maps. Then I saw it. Someone was at my house with me. I started thinking of all of the different possibilities of who would be that close to me. This guy's name was Sebastian. At this point, I was really confused and starting to get worried because I don't even know a Sebastian. And like I stated at the very beginning of this story, I don't ever even remember adding back a Sebastian. I decided to go back downstairs to check and make sure that all of the doors were locked. In my house, we have an alarm system where every time you open a door, it will chime to let you know. For some reason though, it was unplugged, meaning if any of the doors were being opened, whether it would be the shed door, backyard gate, or just any other door leading to my house, no one in our house would be notified. I had asked my cousin if she was the one that unplugged it, and she didn't even know we had it. I was genuinely worried now because when I checked the Snap Map, it said that he was last seen an hour ago. And that very same hour ago was the same exact time when my dog started viciously barking at the front door for no reason. The more that I thought about everything, the more that it seemed connected, but there was really nothing I could do, as I had already checked downstairs and already locked all of the doors. I actually do have multiple cameras around my house, and I decided I would just check them in the morning because I needed to get the password from my mom anyway. It's currently the afternoon now, and I'm still waiting to check the cameras, but nothing really weird has happened since last night. Although when I last checked Snap Maps, it said that he was last seen 11 minutes ago and still at my house. I did send him a chat and then said, "Who are you?" And he just replied back with,
Who am I? Who are you?
So I didn't answer. His Snapchat score is 28,000, so it isn't really likely that this is a fake account. I won't know anything else until I check the cameras, but if I do find anything, I'll definitely insert pictures and screenshots of the chat and Snap Map if necessary. I'm not really sure what to do because I don't really have any proof that I could bring to the cops. It just really seems like everything is just some weird coincidence, and I'm really creeped out at being at my house now. But like I said, I'll let you know if I find anything. Alright guys, so I have an update. Okay, so today has literally been crazy. Me and my cousin both have been really freaked out. I'll start with last night. Me and my cousin had been hearing some really strange things all night long. I even thought that I heard people talking outside my house around 2 a.m. Also, for everyone that keeps telling me to call the police, we actually did that today. But the reason we didn't do it last night or the night before is because at the time, we thought that we were just being paranoid. That is, until now. Sebastian wasn't on the Snap Map at all last night, so we both figured that he wouldn't be anywhere near us, and like I said, we were just getting paranoid. However, we were really wrong. We finally got the password to check the cameras, and fortunately, we didn't really find anything from the night before. Then we checked the footage that was from last night around 2 a.m. The camera picked up a figure, and I have multiple pictures you guys can look at. The figure looks white, but I think it was actually all black and the camera inverted it, but I don't really know. Here's some of the photos and screenshots of when I first noticed that he was on the map. Anyway, for those of you who kept telling us to call the police, we did. They came this morning and they checked the footage. They also looked around our house just to make sure that nobody was still lurking around. They said that they would patrol around our neighborhood when it got dark for the next few nights. They made a report on the man trespassing and we gave them as much information as we could, and hopefully they can find him. We both feel a little bit better now, but it's really unnerving to know that somebody was actually lurking around our house last night. Neither one of us can figure out what he was doing or trying to do. He looked like he was just walking around, but like I said, we really have no clue what he wanted. Anyway, sorry for not updating sooner, but I couldn't get into the camera footage sooner, and I was really just worried and didn't really want to think too much about it. Also, I've been trying to answer your questions. So to all of you that keep telling me to turn off my Snapchat map of myself, well, it was never on. I have no idea how he got my address in the first place, or even if he knew it was my house. And I definitely don't know anyone named Sebastian. This entire ordeal has been very stressful and scary for me, my cousin, and the rest of my family. I'm still very shaken up and really worried that he may return with worse intentions. But I really hope that doesn't happen. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The story happened a couple of years ago after a breakup. I had a little time to myself and I just wanted to meet new people. Not necessarily to hook up, but just go on dates. Here enters JB. Seems nice enough, and we met at the nearest city. We had a pretty good date, and I say goodbye. We make some more arrangements to hang out, and eventually we end up back at his flat in an area of a city that I knew quite well, as I lived there as a student. So I felt pretty confident and comfortable that his flatmates would also be home, and that I wouldn't be completely alone with them. We're sitting downstairs watching The Office when his flatmates come home and they're making their meals, and then he suggested finishing watching an episode upstairs before I left for the bus. Well, he has the smallest room with a single bed and no chairs. He lays down on the bed and I sit on the end of it. He encourages me to move up and I awkwardly do just that. He says that he can't see, so to lie down. So I lie down on the bed pretty uncomfortably, but try to think logically, and we hadn't even kissed yet, so what could really happen? Right at that moment, I really wish that I had just left. Without even a cuddle or anything, the guy just grabs my arm and then tries to shove my hand down his shorts. Nope. Luckily for me, I was kind of clutching my handbag pretty close-ish, and I just flipped out of the bed into a standing position, threw my bag over me, and then ran downstairs, with him saying,
"Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Please don't leave."
He had no shoes on and he didn't know that I used to live in the city. I was so out of there and down a different street that we had come down earlier. I was totally freaking out at the bus stop and on the phone trying to get a lift home before he finds me. I finally make it home and no, I never see him again. I never saw him again, but make no mistake, that wasn't the last time I heard from him. He went mighty quiet after I ignored his messages begging for me to meet up with him again. I spied on his Facebook when he did go quiet, just a little curious. And he had just moved in with a girlfriend. This was mere weeks after the event. Who moves in with someone that quick? Or maybe he was already seeing her. I guess I'll never really know. Cue about 6 months and nothing. I hadn't been on Plenty of Fish for a while after that. And then in January, I get a message from him. He split with his girlfriend and he just wants to meet, chat, and have a coffee with me. Being a little bit lonely, I kind of thought about it. I agreed, but I said that we could only meet in public. He agrees. We make plans on that evening and I'm leaving work and he says that he can't make it and that I should just meet him at his place. Nope. I decline and I go straight home. This goes on for a further 6 months and him badgering and guilting me into saying that I'd meet him at a coffee place and then him changing the plans last minute, then me canceling. This probably sounds like nothing until about June, when I'd been messaging my friend who had lived the next town over. Let's call my friend M. M had a really psycho ex-girlfriend that he had told me all about, and M had a very normal name, but it was spelled pretty unusual, at least to me anyway. So one evening I'm chilling at home and I get a WhatsApp from a number that I don't recognize, and it's mentioned M and the way that his name is spelled. I obviously freak out and I then tell M that I think his crazy ex had sent me a message. Unfortunately, I've totally forgotten what the threatening message actually was, just that I was really freaked enough to ask who it was, and I then get a message back.
You know. M knows.
So M freaks out and I keep getting calls from this number into the early hours, and the caller kept hanging up whenever I answered. I suffered from anxiety at the time, and the next morning I was a total wreck. I went to work and got another slew of random calls. Later that night, I decided to tell my cousin everything that happened, and she called from her phone. Guess whose voicemail she got? Yes, JB. She leaves him a message saying to not contact me ever again or else the police will be involved. I check his Facebook a little while later, and he's apparently moving back to his home country. Hopefully I'll never meet him again. This probably wasn't the most scary or creepy encounter, but it was really playing on my mind, and it really creeped me out. So to start, I'm a transgender woman. I'm single, and I make my status as trans very clear on all of my dating profiles, except for Plenty of Fish, because they consider that to be talking about sex and they will straight up ban you. So I state instead that I'm a huge proponent of trans rights. So this guy messages me and he lives about an hour away. Kinda cute in a mildly creepy way, like something seems a little off about him, but you know, people can't help how they look. So I decide to give him a chance. I discover that he's a smoker, but he said that he's trying really hard to quit and he really only does it when he's really stressed or upset. We have a pretty nice conversation and he finally asks me for my number. And without even thinking about it, I give him the number but tell him that I'm getting ready for my evening classes, so I'll probably be slow on responding. A couple of minutes go by and I get a message.
Hi, it's so-and-so from Plenty of Fish.
Now, usually I send a standard quick message. Something along the lines of, "Hey, it's Allie, so just to be clear, since my profile might be a little vague, I'm a transgender woman. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, so if you're not interested, I completely understand." About 20% of the time, the guy isn't interested and gets really rude and he needs to be blocked. The other 80% is usually split between immediate inappropriate questions and dick pics, as well as casual acceptance or dead silence. But like I said, I was getting ready to go to class, so I hadn't sent the message yet. A couple of minutes go by and I'm about to text him my standard message when I get another text.
Who the hell is this and why is he paying your cell phone bill?
Where did you get that name?
Answer the question. Who is he?
I'm honestly pretty stunned at this point, and I realize that he must have paid one of those shady websites that offered personal info for a fee. Well, if you absolutely must know, I'm transgender, and that used to be my name. I was about to tell you when you pulled that stunt. Please do us both a favor and lose my number. That's incredibly invasive, and I really don't want to talk to you anymore.
Do you still live at the same address? I'm going to come see you so that we can talk about this in person.
No. I moved a few months ago, and I'm getting ready to head out like I said. You really need to leave me alone. Don't contact me again.
Well, since you have something to hide, I'm going to run a full background check on you. You lied to me, and I really don't appreciate that.
You know, I'm going to be sending screenshots of this conversation, your Plenty of Fish profile, and all of your photos to my two best friends who work in law enforcement in your town, as well as my ex-boyfriend who I'm still on good terms with who also works for the local sheriff's office. I'm not kidding. Don't text me again. I didn't really hear anything else from him for a couple of weeks. I made sure that my doors and windows were always locked, and the aforementioned friends and ex would always check up on me from time to time. Eventually, it just became one of those weird things that just makes you laugh, but uneasily. And then one day, I could have sworn that I saw him at my local grocery store. Same dark hair, thick glasses frames, and just this creepy guy staring at me. Literally just watching me as I shopped. I decided to text my ex about it, and as an upswing on things, my ex and I got back together in a casual sort of way, and he actually stayed the night a couple of times a month off and on. One night when I was alone though, I just kept getting this really weird feeling and smelling smoke. I lived in a little apartment complex that were 3 separate apartments that shared walls, but no plumbing or air ducts. I don't smoke and I'm very sensitive to the smell thanks to my asthma. The apartment had a wall unit AC, so I decided to turn it off since it was apparently pulling air in from a neighbor's guest who must have been chain smoking, I thought. I had an ASL video that was due the next morning, So I was up all night practicing and recording the video, signing the same story over and over again until it was almost a dance rather than a narration. A couple of times I actually had to restart the video because my cat was going absolutely nuts. Finally, around 7 a.m., I had the video finished and sent it in, and I was finally ready for bed. I decided to double check that all of the doors and windows were locked and then set an alarm and finally went to sleep. I woke up and got ready for school and was running a bit late and had to hurry out the door. But I noticed something weird but didn't have time to stop and register it. Classes went pretty smoothly. I got an A on my ASL video, and I decided to stop for groceries on my way home from class. As I got home, I then saw what had been bugging me. Each apartment had a really small garden on each side of the porch. Mine was really nothing but gravel and pavers that the previous tenant had put in, but it was pretty tidy. That is, except for a pile of cigarette butts that looked like someone had dumped their car ashtray right into my garden. There was no other trash, just that pile, right in front of my bedroom window. I didn't really think anything about it at first and just get a broom and dustpan to sweep it up. As I'm doing this, my neighbor, who's an old man, comes out and he asks me if my boyfriend was ever able to get a hold of me. I ask him what he means, and he tells me that there was a young man that was waiting for me on my front porch off and on for a few hours last night, and he'd seen the guy around a few times and thought he was my boyfriend. I asked him what he looked like. Dark hair, thick glasses, chain smoking. I text the on-again, off-again ex, cops take statements, and I give them the screenshots. I moved out of state a few weeks later for unrelated reasons, and I've legally changed my name since this happened, with closed records. I don't give guys my number anymore. To anyone out there that might be experiencing something similar, use a texting app until you can really get to know someone. Because for only about $5, creeps can get literally everything from your phone number. Be safe out there. A little while back, I decided that I needed to get back out there and start trying to meet new people. Not necessarily actively looking for a relationship, but meeting people at the bars just wasn't really working for me. So, as most single college girls, I downloaded a dating app. I met a lot of people and talked to them online, and it gave me the confidence to try and actually go out on a date every now and then. I didn't meet up with many of these guys in person, but there were a few. Most didn't really lead to a second date, but there was one that was actually worse than the rest. I met this guy named Alex, and we made plans to go out to dinner. He said that he wanted to take me to this really nice restaurant in the town between us, but when the day came, he never answered his phone. The next day, he contacts me with a story about getting stuck at work and forgetting his phone at home. Whatever, excuses. I wasn't really buying it, but he asked to reschedule. Stupidly enough, I said yes. So the day comes and he tells me to meet him at his house and he'll drive us to the restaurant that he made the reservations at. He said to come hungry like 3 times and kept reminding me not to eat beforehand. I guess this place has big plates or something. Now, I don't really like meeting people for the first time at their home or getting into their car, but we had been talking for over a week, so I just figured, what the hell. But when I got close, he calls me and tells me to park in the parking lot down the road. Weird, but okay. Small driveway, I guess. Trouble is, I never actually told him what kind of car I drove, but he pulled into the parking lot right behind me, and then he sent me a text saying that he was parked 2 spots down. Red flag number 1. So I get in his car against my better judgment, and we start heading for the restaurant. Now, I didn't really know where we were exactly. I'm not really that familiar with the town, but I know the restaurant that we're heading to, and it shouldn't have been more than like 10 minutes away on a major highway. But almost 25 minutes later, we're driving some dark back road. So I looked at him and then I say, "Hey, where the hell are we going anyway?" He proceeded to tell me that he hadn't told me the full story. Apparently when he called to make the reservations, it took 3 times of calling before they actually answered. And when someone finally did answer, they told him they had moved locations, and then given him a description of where they were now located. My stomach dropped when I realized that we had passed that intersection probably about 5 minutes before this point, and I realized that he didn't have an address punched into his GPS, even though the GPS was running. Red flag number 2. So I pulled up my GPS, punched in the name of the restaurant, and it said the business was closed for the day. Red flag number 3. At this point, yes, I know I was being stupid, but I decided to stay and we hung out and talked and got to know each other. Still, the way he went about things was kind of creepy, and when he couldn't find the restaurant, he just kind of said,
"Don't worry, I know another place we can go,"
and drove farther into the darkness, eventually pulling over to a trail in the woods and told me that we had to walk the rest of the way. He said we were going stargazing. The spot was beautiful and all, but the whole way through the woods to the clearing, he just kept cracking jokes about how he swore he wasn't a killer or something, and telling me to promise that I wasn't going to steal his keys and take the car and leave him there. Red flag number 4. I'm not really sure how to explain this, but through half the night, he just kept lying to me. He would tell me these big, elaborate, detailed stories and then suddenly end it with,
"Just kidding, that never actually happened."
I mean, it was pretty funny the first time when he tried to convince me that he got so drunk one night that he got his penis pierced. But after hours of this crap, I realized that he had been just kidding about almost everything that he said. I realized that I didn't even really know anything true about this guy. Red flag number 5. Yes, I know. I'm an idiot. We were talking about going to watch a movie at his house. He was all for it and then apparently changed his mind and pulled the car over in front of a park suddenly on the way back. He said that he'd rather just stay there. He kept trying to dare me to run naked through the park and asking me weird sexual personal questions. He suddenly demanded to know if I was going to kiss him or not before the night was over, and he said that he wanted to put on chapstick first. I kid you not. This guy literally made me dig through my purse looking for chapstick while he sat in the driver's seat making a big show of licking his lips and trying to subtly rub his dick through his pants. I told him that I didn't have any chapstick, so he said that was fine, but
"Why don't you crawl on over here and show me what you got?"
I told him that I didn't really think I was comfortable with that, and then he proceeded to reach around me and try and drag me into his lap, using my butt as leverage. I told him again that I had no intention of sleeping with him or anyone on a first date, and again he said that it was fine, but
"How about a little 2-minute preview?"
Final red flag. Sirens are totally going off in my head now. I got pretty mad at this point. Keep in mind, this was after he had spent literally days telling me how much he hates men who try to force themselves upon women, and how he doesn't understand how anyone could do that, let alone get pleasure from it. This after he said that he didn't want to sit too close to me while we were stargazing so that he didn't make me uncomfortable. It was literally like a switch had flipped. I told him that trying to force me wasn't going to make me any more likely to agree, and that I thought he was supposed to be a gentleman like he had claimed. This guy actually told me that he thought I was just scared of how big it was, and that if I didn't want to suck it, there were other options. I told him again that it wasn't going to happen, and he actually pounded about it. I was literally racking my brain trying to think of an excuse to get him to drive me back to my car when he pulled out his phone, opened a text message thread, and then looks at me and says that he got a text from his uncle, saying that something had happened at the house and that he needed to get home ASAP. I mean, I'm done at this point regardless, but I really hate being lied to. I mean, if you weren't having a good time with me, you could have just asked to call it a night. Why lie? Why make up false intentions and then deliberately act the exact opposite way of what you just said? I mean, just why? To make things worse, he dropped me off at my car in the dark parking lot at midnight, and then just drove off before I'd even walked to my car. Obviously, there wasn't going to be a second date. But the kicker? I drove by the old location of the restaurant a few days ago. It never moved. I mean, it's still open and right on the highway, and his house is literally about 2 minutes down the road. So where the hell was he taking me? So creepy guy Alex from Bumble, you really suck. Back in 2015, when I was about 20 years old, I was using Tinder a lot. Sometimes I would go out with a girl and we wouldn't connect, or I'd get stood up. I went to meet up with some friends from IU in Bloomington for a weekend of just hanging out and enjoyment, and I figured that I might meet a nice girl and hang out and get to know her. I don't remember the girl's name particularly, but we matched and we had talked for about a day, and we decided to hang out at her apartment later that evening. I told my friends that I was going to go out and that the apartment was only about 5 minutes away from their place. I got in my car and put on my GPS, and I made it to the apartment in a few minutes, texting her and asking which apartment door was hers. I walked around the open complex searching for the right numbers until I got to her building. I texted her to meet me at the door to let me in because I was pretty sure that I was at the right building. She said okay, and I just stood outside waiting for about 5 minutes. Let me just also add that it's also about 10 o'clock in the winter. I began to notice something as I looked up at my phone. I noticed a window with blinds from the bottom floor open up, with what I could assume was about 4 different people just staring at me. I texted this girl asking where she was, and she told me the door to her building was open and that her apartment was the first on the right. I walked to the door and I was really surprised that it was unlocked. As soon as the door to the complex was shut, I turned to the left and I heard someone from behind the door then say,
"Shh, he's outside the door."
That's when I realized that the door that I was at was the same one with the people staring at the window at me, and I got a gut reaction that I really needed to leave or something was going to happen to me. I walked out of the complex and went by the window, which I noticed the lights had been shut off, and then I ran to my car and got out of there as fast as I could. As I got back to my friend's place, I explained to them the situation, and they didn't really take it as serious as I did. As the night went on, we had a few beers, and before I went to bed, I actually got a text that said,
"Where did you go? I've been waiting for you all night."
I blocked the number and went to sleep. So if you're ever on a dating site, always agree to meet in public. This all happened when I was 19 years old. I'm not the best looking dude, so I've never really had much luck with women, and I ended up on Tinder. I wasn't having much luck on there either until like the 3rd month of using it, when a blonde woman named Katie then messaged me. She was pretty enough that I just dismissed her as a bot. It wasn't until about 3 days later that she messaged me again, which was really odd because bots almost never message me more than once. I clicked on her chat and then replied, then looked at her profile. What I saw was pretty generic, but definitely wasn't a bot's profile. We had been talking for like a month when she proposed the idea that I come see her. I was pretty reluctant as she lived nearly 8 hours away from me by car, but I had to admit I really did like her quite a bit, and I'd actually been thinking for a while now about asking if I could go see her. After a bit more badgering from her, I finally said that I would take the drive to go see her. At this point, I really had no reason to doubt she was who she said she was. We had video chatted about every other week and called most days. I just assumed that I got really lucky. Things did get a little weird though on the way there. She kept messaging me asking me where I was and making sure that I was still coming. At some points, whenever I took more than 30 minutes to respond, she would send me a slew of annoyed texts. Admittedly, I had chalked this up to her being nervous about me coming to see her. I was pretty nervous too, so I couldn't really blame her. I had a really hard time finding the house at first. The directions that she gave me were pretty confusing, and it was back through a series of gravel and dirt roads and a large thicket of trees. It was still about midday when I came into an old-looking house. A window on the 2nd floor was all boarded up, but it didn't really look abandoned, just worse for wear. Katie's red buggy that she would always talk about was parked right in front of the garage. I took out my phone and texted her that I was here, and she only sent me a smiley face in return. When I got out of my car to go knock on the door, I noticed someone was looking at me from one of the 2nd floor windows. I found it a little creepy, but figured it was just her father or something. She had told me that he comes to stay with her every now and again, so I just ignored it and knocked on her door. She answered with a smile and even gave me a kiss, which really surprised me, and I followed her inside. We sat down on her couch and started talking about her plans when I asked her about her dad. "So, you didn't tell me your dad was here. Was that going to be a surprise or?" I said. Katie looked really confused and she told me that her dad wasn't there. I thought that she was keeping up the act, and I told her that she didn't have to keep pretending, and that I'd seen him looking at me through the upstairs window. Katie went pale, and she said that we had to get out of that house right now. We both ran out to our cars, and when I questioned Katie, she informed me that her dad wasn't there and that she had been home alone until I showed up. I called the police, and while I was on the phone giving the address, Katie then gasped and she pointed to the window where I had seen the guy last. He was now looking at us from out the window again. I got a better look at him, and he seemed a bit older and frail, almost like he hadn't eaten anything in a really long time. He then left the window after he saw that we saw him. The police took about a half an hour to show up, and the whole time Katie was crying. She was also mumbling about how she was an idiot for not keeping her doors locked. When the police finally did show up, one started asking me and Katie questions, and the other two searched the house. They came back out a little while later, and they told me and Katie that while they didn't find anyone, they did find out that the back door was hanging open. Whoever it was had run out into the woods, and the cops were pretty sure the house was empty. After the cops left, Katie asked me to stay the night because she was too scared to be in her house alone. I gladly did, and we slept downstairs on the couch, as Katie's bedroom was right next to the one that the man had been in. Katie had also brought out the shotgun that her father had given her, but she never used. I told her it was fine. The man's gone, but she insisted, saying she'd feel safer if we had it out. I'm really glad she did. Later that night, I was still wide awake, watching TV. Katie had somehow managed to fall asleep. Right from the kitchen, I then heard the sound of a doorknob being turned. At this point, I wasn't even scared, I was just pissed. I flipped on the light in the kitchen, pointed the gun at the kitchen door, and there he was. The very same guy that had been in the house before was standing on the other side of the glass door. He looked shocked, and I'm really glad we had locked the door. The man unfroze and yet again ran into the woods. I woke up Katie and I told her what happened, and we called the police yet again. When they arrived, they did a sweep of the woods and found no one yet again. They told me and Katie that it'd probably be a good idea to stay somewhere else for the night. Me and Katie said our goodbyes. She was going to go stay at her friend's house, and I was going to go home. I left a little bit after Katie did. I was on the phone with my brother telling him what happened. My headlights were on. As I was talking on the phone, something caught my eye. That same freaking man was standing at the corner of the house just watching me. I immediately gunned it out of there, and I didn't even bother calling the police again. But I did text Katie about it, and she said that she was going to call them again. I don't think that Katie ever even went back to that house alone ever again, and I really can't say that I blame her for that. So yeah, that was definitely one of the scariest nights of my life. This happened in 2011. I had just gotten out of a really rough relationship a few months prior to this happening. My friends had encouraged me to try dating again, so I caved and I then made a profile on Plenty of Fish. I was really surprised with how many messages I'd received within the first few hours. Most were just people saying hi or asking to hook up. I wasn't really looking for a hookup, so I ignored those. After about a week, a guy roughly about an hour away from me sent me a message. He was cute, so I decided to message him back. The conversation was pretty casual at first. He asked me if I'd like to go out for coffee sometime. Not really thinking anything of it, I said sure. This is where it started to get weird. He started to get really pushy and asked when we could grab the coffee. I told him that I didn't have my own car, so I'd have to borrow my mom's car to meet up with him. He offered to come pick me up, but I wasn't really comfortable with that idea. The next message made my blood run cold. It read, "I'm sure your hometown isn't that big. If I knocked on a few doors, someone would be able to tell me where you lived." "Are you crazy?" I replied. "I'm sorry, but that's kind of creepy." This just really pissed him off. He messaged me multiple times after this. They said, "You know that I can make you disappear and no one would ever look for you. You're nothing but a slut. I could throw you down a well and no one would ever find you." I was really scared at this point, so I asked him to just please leave me alone. He then replied with,
I know where your hometown is. It's not a big town. I can find you.
At this point, I'd really had enough, and I blocked him. I reported his account to Plenty of Fish and deleted my account. I was really on edge for the next few weeks after that happened. I was honestly afraid that he was actually going to come look for me. So did the really creepy guy who threatened me on Plenty of Fish. Stay the hell away from me. Last month, I moved to another country where I didn't really know almost anyone. Due to that, I had spent a lot of time alone and started to get really bored. Although I didn't really like the concept of Tinder, I decided to create an account to meet new people, and I spent hours swiping left and right and having brief conversations with my matches. However, most of them were men that wanted to see me on the same day, which kind of scared me a bit. Our story begins when I matched with a 30-year-old girl who didn't wait too long to send me a hi nor ask me for my number. I, who had never used the app before, thought that was pretty normal, and I gave my phone number to her without having spoken to her at all. And that was my first mistake. At first, everything seemed pretty normal to me. The girl, which name was Diana, sent me voice notes, and we had talked briefly and in superficial ways about ourselves. She seemed very, very interested in talking to me, since on several occasions she would double text me whenever I didn't answer quickly. And I'm not going to lie, I found that curious. However, I didn't really pay any attention to it. The second day of talking to her, she asked me to meet her somewhere, and even though our conversations had been pretty superficial, I said yes, and we then set a place and time. But hours before our meeting, I then regretted it, deleted Tinder, and then sent her a message apologizing. That was where things got really weird. She texted me that it was fine, but then a few minutes later she sent me several messages, then deleted them within a second so that I couldn't read them. Then a couple of hours later she tried to video call me. I didn't answer and I told her I was busy. And despite that, she called me anyways yet again and again. I kept telling her that I was busy, but still, she called me twice at like 2 a.m. and by that time I was out drunk and I blocked her. I felt a little bad about it, but I mean, come on. I'm a woman in her early 20s living in a foreign country. So at the same time, I felt pretty relieved that it was over. Except it wasn't. I woke up to a hello from an unknown number, which profile picture in WhatsApp was of an old man. I asked him who it was, and in less than a minute, I then received an answer. It said, "Hi, it's Diana. This is my dad's number. Why did you block me? Did I annoy you?" Even in spite of how bizarre that was, I tried to empathize with her, and I then answered with the truth. And again, she told me that it was fine, and then I blocked the number. In less than 2 hours, I received another message from yet again another unknown number. It said, "Hi, it's Diana. Why do you keep blocking me? I need to talk to you. Text me." At this point, I really no longer find it funny. I tell her that I'm no longer interested in talking to her, and she literally tells me, "But I need to tell you something. There's this girl who's been harassing me. She does black magic." I repeat that I'm not interested, and then she says, "You don't believe me, do you?" And then I finally blocked her again for the third time. Anyway, I don't really know if this was just some kind of strange joke, but I think that I can say my first experience using Tinder was pretty tragic. I wonder if it's always like this though, because I've been thinking about downloading it again and giving it a try. At least I now know that next time I shouldn't share my phone number with someone I haven't talked to. Let's just hope for the best. And Diana, please don't text me or contact me ever again. Please.